Hi, I'm Tessa Laird. I'm the curator of this exhibition. It's called Baroquetopus, and the subtitle is Humanimal, Entanglements and Tentacula Spectaculars. It's part of the Octopus exhibition series that Gertrude Contemporary runs. It's a series that's been running since the year 2000, and this is the 22nd version of it, Octopus 22, taking place in 2022. When I titled this show, I made up a word. I put two words together that aren't usually related. One of them is Baroque or Baroque, which is an art historical movement from Europe. And the other one is Octopus, which is an animal. And together, this word Baroquetopus doesn't really mean anything, but I kind of like the way that it makes us think about how nature and culture aren't separated. I really don't like the idea that we have these two distinct categories where you have the natural world and the cultural world, and you sort of think of the cultural world as being all about human production and the natural world as kind of what animals are assigned to, and they don't have culture, they're just, I don't know, biological entities. But of course they have culture too, and I think that's nowhere more apparent than when you see, for example, a bowerbird that makes a fantastic nest, which is kind of like an art installation. There are fish that make sand mandalas on the bottom of the ocean. There's all kinds of song and dance and pattern and color in the natural world that is very much like our fashion and our dance and our song, our theatre and so on. So I really like the idea that we kind of mesh these worlds of nature and culture together. We're too used to thinking that humans aren't actually animals. They are animals, we are animals. So if you use the word humanimal, it kind of makes it really clear that we're just one among many animals. I've been working quite intuitively. I've been choosing artists that I think relate to these ideas of the enmeshment of nature and culture, and artists that have a particular interest in animal life, hoping that by putting them together in this space, that different forms would start to emerge, different ideas, different relationships.
There's specific kinds of prompts within Baroquetopus relating to the Baroque as a kind of like art historical moment, and ceiling paintings within churches, or this kind of like elaboration of labor, of like complexity of work. That was something that I kind of really wanted to zoom in on. We're standing underneath Falsework, Toxicology. This work is an assemblage of over 380 laminated sheets which have been produced over the last 2 years. We've got cyanotypes with stencils, stamps, transparent, reflective plastic, perforated vinyl prints, tissue paper, coconut oil in Ziploc bags, custom-made rubber stamps that we would fill the page with. Then we would use printmaking techniques. There are paper cut stencils. They're often finished with holographic authenticity stickers, which kind of iterate the work together, turn them into a collection. Was interested in providing a plastic toxic counterpoint to some of the other kind of ecologies within the exhibition. The toxicity in colour also relates to patterns within kind of like biology and evolution called aposematism, where a species, if it's poisonous to eat, it will have brightly coloured bodies. The nature of the octopus as a being which kind of like can change shape, colour, is such a monstrous, non-human kind of creature too. So during night, when the gallery isn't open to visitors, but is accessible to people on the street, there's UV or black lights which are turned on, and so the UV reactive elements of the work pop, react, glow, so it does come alive in this other kind of mode.
These are 3 amazing vases by the artist and jeweller Kate Rode. They each have these octopus plinths. I'm really interested in the way the artist is looking at the Baroque period and the Rococo period in terms of the decorative approach. It's also one of only 2 works in the show that actually feature octopuses. She usually uses resin, but that's actually quite a toxic substance. And I asked her if she would consider making a non-toxic artwork, because I really wanted to think about having a more sort of ecological standpoint And she agreed, and this was a departure for her, using things like the chicken wire, the plaster bandage, air-dried clay. All of these things will disintegrate, whereas resin won't. She incorporates animal motifs into all her work, but this is the first time she's actually used octopuses. So this work is a series of greeting cards by Ivor Cantrell. Ivor has over the years created lino prints for greeting cards. He makes so many of them that he isn't able to give them all away, and so I thought it would be a great time to get them out of storage and exhibit them. He first of all prints them as black and white lino prints, but then he colours them in with a range of felt tip pens and crayons. There's so many variations, even though you do also see repetitions. Everybody has a different personal favourite, and it sort of speaks to the way that we all see differently. The fact that he really focuses on animals, cats, dogs and birds, I think says something really interesting about animal subjectivities and what goes on inside an animal's mind. They have different colour ranges, different senses. Looking at all of these, I really do get to imagine what it might be like to be other than human. So this work is also by Ivor Cantrell, and filmmaking is also part of his practice. So he draws a lot, but they get turned into films sometimes. And so this is a 1994 work called Zoo Animation, and it's basically a day at the zoo where Ivor's looking at an enclosure of a bear family, and you can sort of see in the background at times little people walking past, little viewers walking past and looking at the animals. These are two possum skin works by Yuin Monaro woman Gina Bundle. She's reviving ceremonial cultural practice, which is possum skin cloaks that were worn for all kinds of ceremonial purposes. You would be gifted one as a baby, you would be buried in one. With Gina Bundle's work, she has, in both instances, focused on an animal that's from her country, in Yuin country, the flying fox in one and the lyrebird in the other, and both of these have special cultural meanings to her. There's something incredibly beautiful and hopeful about the reclamation of this practice. So it was really important for me to have Peter Waples Crow in the show because he has a long-term relationship with the image of the dingo. He's a queer Ngarigu artist, and he's always said that as a queer Aboriginal man, he's felt like he's a bit on the edges of society, and in that respect, he really relates to the wild dog or the dingo. And in this cloak, you can see the dingo here and also the rainbow, symbolizing his queer identity. While Peter's work is often usually really brightly colored and celebratory, this cloak is a mourning cloak. It's called Sorry Business, and it marks the passing of his partner. This is Muriel. Muriel is a bunyip, and she's a sea guardian, and she was made collectively by Balloch Arts. She's made out of kelp. Her head is actually made from a kangaroo pelvis, and her heart is made from ghost net. And ghost net is something that gets left behind after fishing, and it can be really dangerous, and lots of other fish and other sea life can get entangled in it. So retrieving it from the sea and turning it into art is the best possible thing you can do with ghost net. This is going to be her last exhibition. She's very brittle because kelp is very brittle material. So the idea is that she'll return to the sea, but of course the non-organic elements will be taken out first. This is the film Deep Blue by the Colombian filmmaker Sebastian Wiedemann. During the pandemic, Sebastian made this film. He uses a lot of footage of underwater sea creatures combined with people. I think he's trying to get at this sense of breathlessness, not being able to breathe when it felt like we couldn't move or go out or do anything. But there's also a sense of hopefulness in that depression, because there's a sense that we'll come out at the end of it and we'll all breathe together. There's a whole lot of micro, macro language going on where you sort of see microbes in the water 1 second and you see the stars in the sky the next second. So I think he's really trying to get us to think about our interconnection. So this piece is called Baby Eke. That means baby octopus in Cook Island Māori. Ani O'Neill is an artist from Aotearoa, New Zealand. She's from Rarotonga, which is part of the Cook Islands. Eke are the totem animal of her village called Titikaveka. She's made them using crochet. She's an artist who uses a lot of crochet and craft in her work, and she often makes things modularly, so lots and lots and lots of them. She often makes things with people. She gets them to help out. I like the idea that they're kind of crawling across the Tasman, crawling across the Pacific, and crawling across the walls. This is a work by the artist Lycan Kelp. You can probably tell from her name that she really likes plants, both on the ground and under the sea. This work is called chromatophores. It's actually the name for the colour-producing sacs in octopus, squid and cuttlefish skin. Her work is very often about colour and chemical reactions. She's a little bit like a contemporary alchemist, somebody that likes to play with potions. There's a sense of kind of experimentation when she works, and what you're seeing here is kind of the residue of a performance that took place. It was called kelping. She has a freezer here that's full of these kind of ice eggs, supposed to evoke the eggs of an octopus. Her work is really about how do you produce colour. Everything is about change and processes of metamorphosis. Each artist is operating in a very different way, and they're kind of coming at these ideas from different angles, so that together maybe there are interesting conversations that form.